What is up, Adalo makers? Today I wanted to briefly go over some improvements that have been made to the responsive apps builder. This is going to make it a whole lot easier to manage parent components and children components. And if you don't know what those are, I will explain those very quickly. So say that I've got an app here and I want to create a little container here. I might use something like a rectangle or an ellipse or even an image. Let's say I wanted to make like a little tile here to put some stuff in. You'll notice that the borders of this are now this nice teal color, and I've got some drag handles here to resize this if I want. But what this teal color denotes is that this is potentially a parent component, or it is a top level component. And what I mean by that is if I click on this home button here, you can see that there's no both of these components, this top navigation and this rectangle, neither one of them have the little drop down arrow, which means that there's no components inside either of these two things, right? Now I can drop things inside of this. If it's completely inside this rectangle, if I just kind of click and drag this and drop it back in, you'll notice that the border for this text label here turns to this nice yellow color. And this tells me that this text label is actually a child of this rectangle component here, meaning that it's inside of this rectangle component. And we can confirm this by going up to this, clicking on the entire screen on our label here, and you can see that now we have this little drop down arrow and there's our text label inside that rectangle there. And there's two ways to remove something from inside a parent component. You can either just double click to get inside of it, and then you can click and drag it out of that component. You can see those little the kind of dashed lines around the rectangle component there. If I drag it outside, you can see again this turns back to a top level component. And again, you can see now I've got my enter text label is separate from rectangle. It's no longer inside of it, right? So that's one way. The second way that you can remove it is actually from the components tree. So if I go click this back button here and click back to home again, or of course you can click on the home label here, I can click the down arrow and I can actually just click and drag this component in this component tree itself to rearrange how it fits on the screen. So you can see that now the rectangle is actually on top. So I can't see my text component back in there, but you can see that it's actually a separate component that's underneath that rectangle. So things that are in this component tree are from the top down. Things on the bottom are furthest from the user in terms of depth on the screen, and things that are on top are, well, on top on the screen, right? So if I wanted this text label to be on top of the rectangle but not inside of it, I could just do something like that. And if I wanted it to be inside this rectangle, I could, of course, just grab it as a component and then just kind of re-drag it and drop it in there, right? And now it's inside that rectangle, all right? And you can do this for a lot of different things. So we can do this for images as well. So if we've got an image here and I wanted to place this text component inside this image, you can see that now the image here is the parent component and I have the text as a child component. Now you can do lots of other different things here, like what if I wanted to nest things inside of one another? So if I wanted this image to be inside that rectangle, right? You can see that now I've got this rectangle and this rectangle has an image inside of it. And then let's say I wanted to put like an icon inside of this image. You can see that we've got now some nested objects here, meaning that they're like those little, Russian nesting dolls that you might see where they just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We've kind of got the same thing here. So the image is a parent component of the icon, and the rectangle is a parent component of the image, right? So we've got things inside of things inside of things. Okay, so you can do that with images. You can do that with ellipses here as well. Do that with an ellipse. And you can also do this with lists as well. So if I have a custom list and I want to drag things inside of this custom list, again, I can drag things anywhere in this list here and it will replicate that item throughout the list, right? So you can see that that button that I've placed inside the list is now replicated, but this button, because it's yellow, is a child of this list component. And again, we can confirm this in our kind of component tree here. You can see that the list is the parent component, and inside I've got a rectangle, and then inside that rectangle I've got a button, a subtitle, and a title, right? And the way that you would kind of get into each of these to edit them directly is just by double clicking. So if I double click into this one, I've got the rectangle, and then if I double click again, I can get in and actually change the title there, right? So rectangles act like auto groups. We've got another video coming about how when to use rectangles versus when to use grouping. So be sure to be on the lookout for that video. But I just wanted to highlight some of these changes that we've made to how the borders look and kind of how this auto group and the parents and children kind of interact in the new responsive app builder.